Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our March meeting. March signifies springtime for me, and I'm looking forward to it, although every week it just depends on what the weather is, and it'll be 72 degrees today, and by the end of the week I think it's probably the high might be 60. So, we'll get through this and all the pollen and all that kind of good stuff. So again, thank you all for joining, and those who are joining virtually as well. We will go ahead and start with our agenda. I'll ask if there are any adjustments by council to the agenda. Staff?
No, sir.
If not, I'll ask for a motion to accept our agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion is made, received in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item on the agenda are items from council and myself. I'll start with Mr. Now.
I don't have anything, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, though.
Okay, great. All right. Mr. Harris?
Just had a couple of things that the mayor or the town manager and I went to Raleigh here a while back to visit with some of the representatives, and our mayor was already down there visiting some others and with our senator, so we saw his picture with her. So we kind of met down there with different ones that are on appropriations and not necessarily our representative, but who our representative felt could help us. So I felt really good about looking, we're going to see some dollars come towards this town from the legislature this year. We've asked them for $2.5 million for the park, and the rest of it's out of $20 million for the water and sewer. I feel good that we're going to see a pretty good trip, and we've made a couple of visits down there. Eddie and I went with the town manager last time and met with our specific ones, and feel good about it that we'll see some, and hopefully we'll see lights in the park by the end of the year. And then the other one is that Mayor Pro Tem and I participated in a mobility plan that you'll see it coming up on here on one of these adjustments. And the lady interviewed us and wanted to know her questions she asked us were kind of, until you get like the 21 complete, those are, what are some things you need? And the two things I mentioned the most I thought was stoplights at both ends of Autumn Leaf. It's something we need if we're not going to get through. We get a road and a couple of things. And the Mayor Pro Tem, when he talks, he can maybe mention the other kind of things that we mentioned to him also. So hopefully, over the next 2 or 3 years, at least we can get some minor things done until we can get 4 lanes through town.
Great. We'll hold you to the appropriations.
Do what?
No, we can hold you to the appropriations.
Well, you can hold me.
With that, Ms. Harris?
Just a couple of things. I just wanted to thank you all for the card during the loss of my father-in-law, as well as I lost my aunt in the same week. So I appreciate you all for the phone calls and the card and the sympathy showed during our time of loss. This is not really funny, but I was in a meeting yesterday with someone, NAACP meeting, and I was sitting beside a guy, and we were talking. He said, "What's your name?" "Well, I've never seen you before." Blah, 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 blah. And then I said, "Yeah, I'm in the town of Troutman." He said, "I live in Troutman." So we just got to talking. I've never seen this guy before in my life, and we just got to talking. So it was just interesting to see somebody else that in NAACP from Troutman that I'd never met before. I thought I knew. It sounds funny, but I thought I knew all the black people in Troutman, but I don't. So, but it was just
like that publicly.
But anyway, so it was just great to talk to him, and we were talking about him getting more active, and all of us getting more active in the town, and but it's just good to get to know our citizens, even in a different town. So if I wasn't supposed to say that, I said it.
Join the list of people.
If anybody can say it, I can say it. Sorry about that, but anyway, that's all I want to say.
Good. Ms. Josh?
Yes, just like you said, good to see this good weather. Had to knock the rust off the old lawnmower and fought clover for most of the weekend, so it's good to get back in that habit, honestly. But on a more pertinent note, I do have the honor of recently being appointed to the executive board of the Centralina the Central Line Executive Board. So I think it'll be a great experience for me, hopefully for the town as well. Great learning experience, and see how we can work more closely, and be more tied to our greater regions. I look forward to it.
Congratulations.
Mr. Hinkle?
Well, first of all, congratulations on your appointment to the executive board. That's a nice accomplishment, just your second year, starting your second year, that's a nice accomplishment. And congratulations to you, sir.
The need and the want, I can't really say how much it was.
Well, it'd be a good, if nothing else, networking and getting out there and meeting people, and learning their needs and our needs, and you'll be in a good focus group to, hopefully help Troutman out as well with our needs, and so forth, in addition with all the other folks you'll be serving this. Again, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I enjoyed last week's retreat. Got a lot out of it. Was a little stiff and sore at the end of the day, but that's part of the job. But I did. My brain was still functioning, so I got a lot out of it mentally. Looking forward to upcoming budget to start implementing some of the things that we discussed and the limitations that we had in that last Tuesday. Trying to get everything said and done. So looking forward to that. I don't know, sometimes kind of like saying I'm looking forward to a tooth pulling or root canal, but still and yet, get some things accomplished at budget time. That's probably singularly one of the most, if not the most important function we have during the year, or how to spend taxpayers' money and to do it wisely and effectively for the benefit of the town and the citizens. So again, it's important, even though some people dread it, I'm sure on the various legislative appointed bodies or elected bodies, whether it's county or legislature or state level, whatever, on a local level, it's a very important function, and I'm glad to hear, and thank y'all, you two gentlemen, for your latest visit to Raleigh, and piggyback on what the mayor said, I'm looking forward and hoping that we do get every cent that we hope you feel like it's coming our way. Hopefully so, anyhow, because we can use every dime of it, put it to good purpose, for sure. That's it.
Just to revisit, again, I appreciate all the council members who have had the opportunity so far to visit with our state legislators, and hopefully others will get an opportunity, if their schedule permits, to do the same. As I've talked with our town manager, it's never a one and done during session. It's a continuous conversation that needs to be had as the session goes on. Things happen, other priorities show up, and we need to continue to make sure that our voice is heard during the legislative process. So again, as our needs have continued to grow here in the town, I think it's important that we continue to make sure that our legislative delegation knows what our needs are. And so again, I appreciate you all taking the time to go up there, and hopefully we'll continue that dialogue as well. And I also appreciate you all participating in the CRTPO conversation. Again, that's one of those, the needs continue to grow from a transportation perspective, and we need to make sure that that they're hearing our voices in that conversation as well. So thank you all for doing that. As Felina mentioned, appreciation for the card. My wife's grandfather passed away last week, and so I too appreciate the town sending a card on behalf of the town and the staff as we laid Mr. Willie Thomas Perry to rest after 96 years. 10 kids and 30 some odd grandkids and 30 some odd great grandkids. And so big family, and again, I appreciate all the thoughts and prayers as well. Congratulations also, Gary, and again, appreciate you not just stepping up to participate in Central Liner, but also to take that leadership role. It means a lot both to to the town, but to the region, that we continue to engage as well on what's going on in our regional delegation and what's happening with all of our towns and cities and counties. I want to mention, as Mr. Hinkle talked about the retreat, appreciate the staff taking the time to spend the day really engaged in helping to push the council on some things that we needed to hear and being very transparent about those needs. And so I think the community needs to hear more about that. We need to continue to plan around those items that we discussed. So again, I know it's a long day, usually it is. And you know, we've talked about the retreat and how important it is, but even more so at this juncture for our town. So again, appreciate everybody taking the time out of their schedule to not just participate, but to present and make sure that we have our town needs at the forefront. So thank you for that. That's really all I have. Turn it over to Mr. White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the compliments from all of you elected officials. One of the things that, before I get into the rest of business, is we as staff appreciated the comments and feedback we got from you all over the planning retreat. It's one of those things, we get comments from the public that are not fully engaged, that just gets their news from the social media and wanted to know how much it cost. We don't do breakdown of all employees' time, but certainly for the record and the benefit of those watching on YouTube, some towns do retreats to where they even travel out of state so that they can have team building exercises, not only for the elected officials, but for staff as well. We have just felt in the last few years collectively, I as manager, you all's elected officials, that we needed to know more about business, where we were, where we are, and where we need to go. And it certainly, as far as retreats go, the one we did is as frugal as any you can do. And I appreciate you all wanting to get to the meat, so to speak, instead of having all the other items that go with it. And that's not saying anything negative about another municipality or town that for whatever stage they're in, it feels like they may need to travel for the team building exercises of all persons involved, whether that be staff and or elected officials. We have contemplated it and then even talked about a workshop in the near future that we try to visit a couple towns, hopefully within driving distance, that have had the similar growth booms that Troutman is now experiencing, just so you all can talk from the elected viewpoint, and we as staff can do that as well. With our normal work days, we simply just do not have time to take a day and go and ask questions that would be pertinent. But we do appreciate the process, appreciate you all's feedback. Also, just to reiterate to you all, Lynn and I and you all had discussed the need to have training for planning and zoning and also the Board of Adjustments, just to make sure that it's there. COG, Central Iowa staff will be performing that for us. We're in the process of identifying areas that we as staff see that needs to be expanded upon. As we have said, those folks are a special group of volunteers who are trying to do the right things, but just like what was reported in the press, the last meeting where they're wanting to go into closed session is a perfect example of they don't know what they don't know. So we are looking forward to getting that training sooner than later. For a board that's not quasi-judicial, you certainly can't go into, I think the actual quote was closed sessions instead of closed session, but that's not appropriate, and we will go forward with that and hopefully get all their questions answered through the training that COG will put on in due for us. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor, unless you all have questions.
Any questions for Mr. White or staff? Okay. will continue with our agenda. Staff items. First is the discussion of the town water and sewer service policy, policy 29. Mr. Moody?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, before Justin starts, if you all will look at the information provided in your packet, we have asked, along with Justin and Adam, to go and look at where we were and the fees that we charged with our neighboring towns and cities, also with what is the industry norm. And then Justin and Adam conferred, and we all come up with the fees that you want to elaborate on, Justin.
I don't have really anything else to add, just some of the fees were not up to date. Adam checked around with surrounding municipalities and to see where we fell in line with them, and so that is the reason for some of those adjustments. One thing I don't think we put in there was the water deposits. That was something I wanted to ask council if you all had an opinion on it. Maybe increasing those.
Elaborate, because they don't.
Well, so, for example, in-town resident is $50 water deposit. With our current rates, that doesn't cover a minimum bill if they have water and sewer service, so.
Is there a reason we wouldn't include it, Justin, as we're looking at these, why we wouldn't include that? At least open it up for discussion.
Is there a reason not to include
Right.
it? No, Adam was just looking at those, like meter rates and all that, so that was just something I wanted to bring up to see if council wanted to discuss.
I've just got a question. So I noticed that there is some red type. Is it safe to assume those are the only changes, or?
Oh, on the actual policy, yes, sir.
Okay, but as far as, like you were mentioning adjustments, but like I don't see any red there.
No, I'm just talking in the water and sewer service policy. But with the town manager bringing up the actual fees, that was what I was mentioning there.
Okay. Yeah, because that's when I was looking through, I'm like, I don't actually see any changes to the fees outside of the service fee for online payments.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, yeah, no.
I was asking her to point out where the fee changes were in you all's packet.
Okay.
Under
Yeah,
new business.
that's exactly my question, so that's perfect.
But yes, as far as the water and sewer service policy goes, it was mainly just some grammar changes there, as well as, like Mr. Archer said, the $3 online and phone payment fee.
I guess just based on geography and where I live. So like just billing and due dates, that section, no changes in as far as
No, sir.
what they're like the due dates, past due and all of that's still the same.
Yes, and I would like to point out, ever since I started and probably before, some of these, for example, if you look on page 2 under payment extensions, second, that main paragraph there that's indented, it says once a customer is sent a disconnection notice, they're required to pay their bill in full. That is something that has been lax for a little while, I would think. It's been our policy in-house, and this is probably just one of those things that, quote-unquote small town, it's okay. But when somebody receives a disconnection notice, they've still just been paying the prior month balance past due. They have not been paying their prior past due plus the current month, if that makes sense. So our policy says they need to pay their bill in full, but that has not been heavily enforced. So I wanted to point that out to get you all's opinion on, okay, our policy said that we need to put that into real effect.
Mr. Archer, if I may, Councilman Archer, I apologize. In looking through, clerk handed me the schedule of fees. It's not in my packet, so I'm assuming it's not in you all's.
No, it's not.
Just in the consent agenda items,
It's under
right
consent.
behind the,
Oh, it's in consent, I'm sorry, I thought it was under new
it's
business.
in the consent agenda.
No, it wasn't in here, right here.
Yeah, it's in the one on the left side of the second.
I'm gonna wade through.
Eyeballing how deep you want to
Yeah. I'm gonna wade through.
There we are. Oh, it's right after the,
Hold out, yes.
Yeah, the one negative that I can see there is I had asked that we show the old ones as compared to the new ones.
Yeah,
That way you can see what the difference is. We gladly will have that available Thursday and send it to you tomorrow. But it is entirely up to you all if you wish to leave it as a consent item or something to be discussed more in depth with you having the appropriate information. And I apologize, it was not prepared.
Yeah, I would like to see the old, just do a little comparison. Yeah, sure would.
Totally understand.
and I'm sure this answer's in here, so forgive me. But the, just when it comes to the deposits,
Mhm.
are those ever refunded?
Yes, they are. Once a person, the reason for the deposit is, let's say you move out of town, whoever moves out, and now we don't know where they went to. We don't have foreigner address. And they have a bill that's due, the deposit gets applied to that last bill. And if there's anything left over, that's refunded to them.
Okay, so at the end of service life, I guess, that's what it
Yes.
would be?
Yes.
We have some folks that paid the deposit 20-some years, it's still there. But others, just like he explained, they're here 3 months and they leave and they said, just apply it and don't worry about it. But, as he also points out, the deposit that we have been charging does not carry a minimum monthly bill. So there's always a balance owed now.
Is there a ballpark estimate on what the average monthly bill would be? I guess to kind of target what the new fee should be?
My
I
suggestion.
won't hold you to it, or, you know.
Yeah, my suggestion would just be to simply double the deposits, but, that's just an easy get by. But the average monthly water and sewer bill, probably,
$76
yeah.
and something is what we.
probably
last time we
75
checked.
to 85 range, I'd say.
And doubling those deposits, is that comparable to our neighbors?
I haven't looked at that very deeply, but I know our deposits are less, but I don't know how much less.
We can also send that out to you
Yes.
tomorrow as well.
Well, again, if we're gonna continue to be a little laxed and allow the customer who's behind just to, keep up with the past due month and not current, we're obviously gonna need at least to cover the average. Because that's what we would have to use it against.
Right.
Is that if they just suddenly pick up and leave and just continue paying their utility bill. So obviously that would be something we need to look at least double to make sure we're covering. And then some perhaps, just to make sure that that last bill is not exceeding it, hopefully. So that would have a lot to do with it. So, it sounds prudent, but, again, that's been our policy for as long as I can remember. And I realize somebody might say, well, if they're having trouble making their last month's payment, why are you asking them to bring it up to date? Well, they can bring it up to date and then, down the way, to my knowledge, there's no limit on how many times they can do that during the year if they are having a tough time right now, or out of a job, what have you, a tough economic time, but, to me, it's just wise business, that we continue that policy and, continue to enforce it. And this is something that's on a case-by-case basis with a little bit of compassion to it. Someone that's just you feel like can do it, just stringing you along for whatever reason, or they're using their money, not for wise reasons, instead of paying their bills. That person you're a little bit more strict with than someone who truly is in dire straits, and you feel for them. And I realize that, this day and time, that kind of gets into legally enforceable, a little gray area, to have a strict policy versus a little bit of compassion to it. Because, the one person say, well, you're treating this over here a little differently. Well, perhaps your situation is not the same as theirs. So I say that kind of a little bit of trepidation, but again, I would like to see the policy enforced with a reasonable amount of compassion to it. And by that I mean case-by-case basis, as I said. That's my 2 cents on that. But otherwise, yeah, I look forward to getting the past due. But it looks like, as far as the deposits, since we're discussing that, it seems to be reasonable to at least double them based on what I'm hearing so far.
I agree with you completely. That's why I was kind of torn on this, but I think that we do have the language in here that extensions can be approved by the town manager. So I think having that at a central point, so we don't have people fishing for different people at the window, like you said, these people that are more nefarious about it. And that way we've got a central point, of contact that can weigh these things. And I think if we have it at that same point, in one person or one position, right, then I feel much more comfortable being able to balance that. So yeah, I think it's.
Well, that way it's handled in a more consistent manner than if you have several people doing it, and one's being a little bit more lenient than someone else, and then you do get into some legal problems.
Exactly.
Trying to enforce and so forth.
Justin, on here, under bulk water, there's a water theft. What exactly is that? And is that a fee or is that a?
Where you at, I'm sorry?
I'm looking at the schedule of fees.
I actually don't have a copy of that. Water theft, $500. Yes, so it's a tampering fee. So if somebody gets caught tampering with the meter or theft of water, it's a $500 fee.
What came to mind for me was, didn't we have an issue with the bulk water here on the corner with some people abusing that at some point?
I think that fee may be set in the ordinance too. It's a $500 fee or misdemeanor.
That's what I'm so it's more of it's a misdemeanor.
That's not really bulk water we have over here, right?
Yes,
Yes, right there, and
as far as I know, yes.
that's, like I said, I think it's in ordinance, like.
We do get, we'll get calls from public works saying they thought somebody's stealing water. Officer goes out, gets their information, and then public works, if they don't, reimburse or pay or whatever, then we can use the ordinance to take action to, charge them with $500 for the courts or as part of the misdemeanor.
Now, is that $500 just for the misdemeanor, but they also pay for the water as well, as best determined how much they,
Yes,
they stole?
yes, sir.
Okay.
So like somebody unauthorized taps a hydrant or something like that, or.
Not likely the criminal penalty, which obviously doesn't go to the town.
I'm sorry, do what, Gary?
$500 is likely the criminal penalty, and that doesn't go to the town. That goes to the school system.
Okay.
might ask that, if we're gonna look at it on Thursday, that in that comparison, we have that comparison, so we can review it Thursday. Any other questions on the, water sewer service policy?
Question on the sewer service policy itself is, the policy, it's really mostly just changes on how we collect the fees and all that stuff. And you just made mostly how to payments and stuff like that. And his, her thing I saw down there, but other than that, there's no change in there. The one thing I would ask for in the final to approve, one of the changes I would suggest is, where it says no swimming pools may be filled with, from hydrants without prior approval by the town manager. I'd like to add the public works director there, because, then the town manager, because it's like, sometimes it may be, this one won't be hard to find, this town manager, but another one may be hard to get up with, and the public works guy is the one that really puts the meter on and does everything anyhow. He has to have his crew do it. And I know last year, I didn't know, I had to notice the town manager, even though I didn't get the pool, I had to worry about it. So,
So you're talking either or?
yeah, or, either or, but basically, it's not the town manager that actually physically does this, public works guy that has, when he gets a notice, then he puts the meter on and tells you what size hoses you're gonna use.
Would you prefer to say that?
But it just says the prior approval has to be by the town manager.
Right.
And like I said, wouldn't be as hard for me being on council, but maybe somebody else out there, they don't see the public works do this, let me get Adam for you.
Are you suggesting we say, public works director, if unavailable, then town manager?
That's what I was
Something
saying.
like that?
Yes, but I think the public works guy's the one that has to do the actual, he's the department head anyhow.
Right.
I'm not sure he's good to the town manager level to do that.
The only reason from my understanding that it was ever that way is any adjustments to bills to keep it out of the staff's decision. That's why previous boards had made the decision. Anything that adjusts bills was the town manager approval, but I certainly agree with your point, and 100%. I'm not gonna be doing the work. It's something that they would do.
And all
I
the
agree with
adjustments
that
still have the
completely.
town manager on adjustments and stuff, but this was just one of the, no swimming pool may be filled from a hydrant without prior approval of the town manager, and I was thinking that would be the public works director.
Yeah, I think he's just talking about the water sold for swimming pools.
Yeah, and not the adjustments that you make for swimming pools.
But that is an adjustment, is
Yeah.
what I'm saying. As
Well,
far
that
as,
was not, that's strictly a pay without sewer, just straight water.
No,
They
sir.
put a meter on
It's
it.
adjustment.
no, sir, it's an adjustment. Because they're getting bulk water at that rate versus the water that they would normally receive. So it's still an adjustment, even though it's not me taking X amount of dollars off of a bill. That water is billed separately.
Yes.
And it's still an adjustment to the normal process. And again, I agree with what you're saying. I'm not in opposition. I just wanted to point out the history of why the policy was the way I was explained it was.
And that's once a year, right?
Well,
The swimming pool
it-
policy?
no, sir. It can be multiple times. If they have liners leaking and repairs that have to be made, they can have a party to where they're having a temporary thing brought in. Well, if they do 2 or 3 kids and have these temporary pools put up for a party, then there's multiple reasons that it could happen more than once a year on a case-by-case basis. Normally, you're 100% correct. Somebody does it one time a year and that's it.
Now, well, let me ask you, on page 5, because I'm like Jerry, I remember seeing that somewhere once a year for swimming pools, and I'm looking, water sold for swimming pools. This is on page 5. Property owners with permanent swimming pools that are served by the town water system will be eligible for an annual fill-up adjustment when the pool is filled with water that is metered. Adjustments will not be made for continuous refilling after initial fill-up, and adjustments will be made based on a 3 to 6 month average. Residents are required to call prior to filling swimming pool, and so forth. But it says there on this page 5 that, at least my understanding, after the initial fill-up, it will not be done again. I guess they'd have to,
What you're talking about there is, again, just what's been explained to me, is once they, whatever time, if it's a heated pool, they may start this month. If it's, they let the sun heat them, it will be June that we get the most calls for. The way it was explained to me is that is a fill-up, and then that customer calls after that and says, well, I'm having to spend 1,000 gallons a month because the sun's soaking up the water. We do not do any further adjustments. But as I said, in cases of repair, that's something that's entirely different. It's not the annual fill-up, so to speak, but that verbiage just goes on to explain, hey, you can't just keep adding 1,000 gallons of water a month and let's take that off your bill because you've already had your pool fill-up. Anything after that, their option is like a lot of houses with irrigation system, that they can get the water-only service. That would pay a reduced rate. It's not including our wastewater. So a lot of them is like, well, it's one time a year, it's no big deal, let me pay it, because they don't want to pay the fee, which I think is about $800, to have the separate meter installed just for like watering their lawn and or other things. Now, we do have a couple that do that. They pay for this separate meter, they have pools, they water their yards. That's exactly why they're like, yes, let me go that option.
well, let me ask you this, so evaporation or a leaky liner, and they have to have a second fill-up during the year or something, after that initial fill-up. So are there exceptions made that if they say have a leaking liner, or the pool has to be worked on, drained, and then refilled during the summertime, is that an exception, or how, what?
My practice has been if they can show where there was a repair done, either cost of materials for the couple that was anxious enough to do it on their own, but if they can bring some type of bill showing that there was a repair done, that's why it's neat. I have made that exception in the years past, that they get a refill.
But just simple evaporation during the summertime is not an exception?
That is correct.
I think would it warrant just to have it, because I like that policy. So I mean, I would like to have that in black and white, adding something along the lines we have in some of the other places, approved by the town manager or their designee, to just give you that, full right to make that call. I think that would be a good addition. Yeah, because like you said, topping off just because you don't have any trees or shade around,
Right.
that's not,
Right.
that's,
Yeah.
it's one thing keeping it above your skimmer, it's another thing where you gotta tear in your liner and you gotta drain the
Right,
joker.
right.
So
No,
I mean, I
I
can
agree,
see a
because
big
if you read
difference.
it, the way it is that's it, one time, and that's
Right,
it.
yeah.
But, after hearing the town manager, I agree, maybe we should spell that out, that under certain circumstances, there are exceptions to be determined by, the town manager, and adjustment made or not made, again, case by case basis.
Exactly.
Would that be reasonable to you, sir?
Yes, sir. Justin noted, and we'll make that change accordingly.
You guys agree with that?
Mine was completely different than all that stuff you're talking about. Mine was only on the fire hydrant.
Yeah.
And that, the public works is the guy that has to put the meter on it. I'm paying for all the other crap there, the meter, but I just wanna know, I don't think he should have to go that far up and make that decision.
Yeah.
That's my only part of the question. The rest of it, I agree with you all.
See what you got started?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do that, but I wanted to.
So that we clear up from Mr. Harris with his other stuff, that the last sentence on the Justin, not the last sentence, but yeah, the last sentence of that first paragraph
Yes, sir.
says no swimming pools may be filled from hydrants without prior approval by the town manager.
Yes, sir.
And so your question was, could that sentence read, could no swimming pools may be filled from hydrants without prior approval by the public works director?
Yes.
I think what you were saying is that there's an adjustment that might need to be made, or is that not the case? So could what Mr. Harris saying be a possible change?
Absolutely, it's possible. As I tried to clarify, the only reason it was there was because people considered it an adjustment to the normal water bills. But Councilman Harris is 100% correct. This has nothing to do with your water bill.
Right.
This is an additional fee that you're gonna pay for somebody to go out and install and do. So I think it's certainly appropriate to put in there that the Public Works Director can open up a hydrant with a meter and then charge people accordingly with that. Because to me, at the end of the day, that is not an adjustment that's being required. It's just,
Right.
he makes decisions, as do other department heads, about policy, and that just makes it a clear policy that he can do that. Or
They
she
have.
later.
You know, we had the exception that if Public Works Director, I mean, he's on vacation, he's out ill for a few weeks or something, that you would be the designee, the backup.
Yeah, because
So
of that.
approval by the
Public Works
Public
Director
Director.
or Town Manager.
or town manager.
Because in my case, I have an irrigation meter, so I can fill the pool over a day and a half. Once I get this new liner, I am gonna get one day. But anyhow, mine has a leak and so I was trying to get ahead before, and I just went to, Adam, and we had it set to put the meter in, just the guy didn't show up to put the liner in, so it's still waiting on that. But anyhow, I would get the fire department, get the hoses to get to the house, and then he's put a meter in, and it'd be just on my same out irrigation system fee would be that meter, whatever that was. I mean, I already have the irrigation meter, separate meter. Rather than do it in 2 days, I can do it in 2 hours.
Okay.
So I guess that's my understanding. Sorry, we're killing it, I know. Right, but if I were to go this route, right, and have Adam or somebody from Public Works come out, tap a hydrant, put a meter on it, run it, right? It's financially, on the town side, no different than if I place a call, let you know I'm gonna fill it up, right? Because that's what it says. You're required to call prior to filling or no, and then I would get that adjustment, right? It's a wash for us at the end, correct?
No. It's quicker for the consumer. It actually costs us more labor to do it where we go out and then read meters when they're done, then we go back and say, okay, this is how much it was. It's actually better to do it with the fire hydrant way of less work on staff. But to answer your question technically, is it a wash? No, it's actually better to do the fire hydrant thing than it is to do it otherwise.
Okay. And then from the consumer side, though?
Yeah.
But that's the wash?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Financially.
Financial.
You might be in your pool quicker.
That's right.
But getting back to what you
That's
mentioned, yeah,
exactly.
I would say Public Works Director, or, I said if he's not available, but if you just wanna say Public Works Director or Town Manager,
Town manager.
I'm good with either one
That's
myself.
what I wrote down.
All right, we're good, we're good. Any other questions on that policy? Okay. All right. Next item, schedule remote participation at official meetings. Mr. White.
That's entirely up to you all. You've got a copy of our policy, also the county commissioner's policy, as to what they follow. I'll be glad to answer any questions. As you all have heard, Gary and I have differing opinions, but you can see that the county's adopted a policy that I think is closer to what, in worst case scenario, would benefit you all as a board and citizens. That one, just to paraphrase, if you chose to go with the county version, it allows remote participation by phone or visual, audio and visual, but you're only allowed to miss 2 meetings a year without the rest of council having to take a vote. And having said that, there is still a physical quorum required, meaning we couldn't have 3 of you all out participating remotely. It still has to have a physical quorum present for the remote by whoever 1 or 2 persons that could be absent to occur. The second part of that, understanding the county's policy is, even in closed session, it does not allow, people to vote, or make reference. And if I'm not mistaken, it even goes to explain that in closed session, because of the factor of we don't know who's doing what and where and who may be there, because of the whole legal reasons of what closed session is protected by, they do not allow that, once the COVID orders was removed, they don't allow that participation.
And also quasi judicial, they don't allow it.
That is correct.
One thing, what about zoning and the annexation they had, as you stated, the closed session and the quasi judicial being the,
Board of Adjustments.
yeah, and exactly, and then the zoning annexation hearings and so forth. Now, they don't have that included, whereas, we do on our current policy and.
They proceed as business as normal. The thought process there is, even though we like discussed previously, if somebody had an issue, and if somebody made it an issue in that 30-day legal requirement, then there's just simply a revote later in the board. If that same person, and I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole with the hypotheticals at that point. Well, what if that same person is not here? What do we do? And but the whole point of that is, unless Gary has a different opinion or recollection, I think our board has only been, all the boards in the last 20-some years that I can recall, has only had a 3-2 vote one time when it comes to zonings and annexations that required the second. What, you remember more than that?
The law's now changed, so you don't have to.
Correct, but prior to that, do you remember more than the one? So, again, we can't predict what happens in the future. The next project we have might be one of those that's controversial. But even though there's 3-2 votes on a lot of things, there just hasn't been to where if someone was participating remotely, then some third party come up and say, well, I dislike that, I want to file a thing. I just find it highly unlikely, but the law does allow them to, and it gives them that protection, which is why it further tells me you're allowed to do that. Otherwise, why have a statute telling them what to do to have a remedy?
If I can, just what you were just mentioning there, under F, in line 3, 3 little i's, it has the board members' vote is not the deciding vote on any matter. So that kind of concerns me a little bit too. I mean,
That goes back to that 3-2. Again, normally, we don't have that issue. But if we, how the chair, the mayor would handle that situation is if you had one of those controversial issues, whatever it may be, normal business, zoning, whatever, if it had one of those issues and all in the attendance were tied, and then that remote or 2 remote persons possibly, if they were deciding votes, then that simply is not a concluded business matter that evening, and it's put on later.
But we didn't add that.
No,
to our
it could be,
policy.
because if it was a tied vote in the chamber, then the mayor would vote as a tie, because the remote vote would be invalid.
right.
But we didn't add that statement in our policy. The one we're changing.
The current policy, you all have that
I
statement
mean,
as
the
well
one,
there.
oh, this is current.
Should that be a situation where we have people that are participating remotely vote last? Like, so I guess my question is, are they still required to cast that vote? Or if we, like you said, if we had one person remote and we're 2-2, should they even cast a vote?
Well, my legal opinion is a remote person can't vote. But, no, I think you would just have the vote, and if it ends up being 3-2, and if that remote person is third, the mayor would just say,
That would kick this in.
Jerry Oxter is remote, his vote is invalid, it's a 2-2 tie, and I cast my vote.
Well,
But
would
that
that go
is
under that 30-day extension then, that if no one objects, we do a vote. I mean, if no one objects, then after 30 days, it's valid. Or if someone objects, then at the next meeting, 30 days later, we do a revote when hopefully everyone is
Well,
present.
again, that depends. You would have to, I mean, if you vote and the vote fails, then if it's a rezoning, it's dead. I mean, you gotta wait a year to come back.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying if the vote, if the remote participator is the deciding vote, you know, according here, under the counties, you know, board members vote, the absent or the remote participant, member vote is not deciding vote on any matter. So if it is, then if I'm hearing what, Ron's saying, is that you would wait 30 days, and if there's no,
Contesting of it.
excuse me?
No contesting. of
Yeah, you
that
know,
vote.
contesting of that vote, then it's 30 days, it becomes valid. If not, then we do a revote at the next regular meeting the following month, when hopefully everyone is present and you have the vote then.
I don't see that being valid, no. Because if the person votes and they're the deciding vote, then their vote is invalid.
Right.
And at that point, you've got a tie vote.
And then
And the mayor would have to
step
break
in.
that tie at that meeting. Now, somebody potentially could make a motion before the mayor breaks the tie to continue the matter to the next meeting. So that's, I mean, that's always a possibility. Although I think that under Robert's rules, that would not take precedent over the vote that's on the floor. So I just think that's just a problem.
And
They certainly can, by Robert's rules, decide while a vote is pending to table the matter for a later date. That is allowed.
The other concern I have about at least with zoning issues, is a due process issue. Say somebody comes to a zoning meeting and puts up a slide, or as you know, people will come and pass out things to the board. Well, the remote person likely is unable to see that. And then somebody's gonna say, well, wait a minute, that remote member didn't have all the information and my due process rights were violated.
My response to that goes back to, it's no different than having a new board come in, which we discussed when Councilman Oxford took the seat that we labored over. That's no different than making votes and decisions on things that you have information to as an outgoing board member, but then you're turning around and expecting a new board member to vote on it without the information. Nothing in the statute requires them to attend the meetings and have the information, and even if they did, they would not be allowed to participate in closed sessions to where additional information could be learned then. So while I understand where Gary's coming from, I think just the Robert's rule of way of doing business and council's changing at elected time clearly shows there's some exception for you don't have to have all the information. There's no statutory requirement. You only have to be at the meeting, and then you can show up at the next meeting and vote. While we would logically say, hey, everybody needs to be there and they need to have all the facts and the information to make the vote. To me, like we have said several times, you can go down a rabbit hole with different opinions, just like Gary and I have tried to give you as much advice as possible. His legal, mine's based off of talking with School of Government and other people that have policies contrary to what the recommendation of his is. So we can try to prevent worst case scenario, but until worst case scenario happens or becomes an issue, it's really kind of moot to, I don't know that a policy can do all that, is what I'm trying to say.
let me, yeah, exactly, I hear you. Let me ask you though, what, again, looking at, the county's policy here, under F, line I, single I, the board member has been, again, the board member has been provided and or is able to review all documents presented at the meeting. So that goes back to what Gary's saying, if someone is handing out something or is putting up a slide that is not viewable to someone, say, participating by phone, that member would not have, part of the county's, now again, I'm on page, well, this is on page 9 that I'm referencing now, page 9 under the remote participation, in parentheses, small f, lowercase f, and then subline or line I, single I. Voting by the member during remote participation is permitted when the board member has been provided and/or is able to review all documents presented at the meeting, which would be handouts and you know, perhaps if the guy's by phone, you would see a slide. So, again, that was just, the reason I'm bringing that up, so that's part of their.
Why couldn't the clerk or the town manager then take a picture and forward it to, say, me, that I'm sick at home? Now I'm seeing it.
But there's in there too that you can't do that, not by text or email or anything, you can't conduct.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's in there, somewhere, I can't give you the exact, but it's in there somewhere, and it's even in our policy, that you can't, by text or email, you can't
It's
participate.
D.
B,
D right
okay,
there.
So Gary, let me ask you this
okay,
question.
yeah, B,
The adoption
Little B.
of, just say, for the sake of this discussion, because since Mr. Hinkle is using the county's policy, are you saying that based on what the county's presented here, we would be in violation of the statute?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
He's asking if this county's policy, in your opinion, is an invalid policy.
My opinion is, yeah.
Other questions?
Well,
for-
parts of it. I mean, their policy is very much like our policy. You can't participate in closed session, you can't do quasi judicial, you can't, the absent member cannot be a part of the quorum. The only difference in all is the vote part about you can vote as long as it doesn't count.
But we also, you can't vote on the zoning issue, right?
Yeah, and that's the other difference.
That's what we have
said
different than they do.
We talked about not doing it on zoning issues.
Yes, and they have it, you can't vote if you're a deciding vote.
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
And I don't think, we don't have that in there about the documents, do we? That little line that I mentioned about
No,
having
sir.
the documents, before you, you know, which is in their policy, but I don't think in either one of ours, the one that is in effect and the one that's being proposed, the other one. Okay.
Mr. Thomas, I'm gonna ask you to speculate. Do you see this going before court anytime soon? Because that's the only way this is really gonna be,
Is what we're gonna go before court.
these types of remote participation issues.
There's actually been some court, Charlotte had one recently, but it dealt with, it dealt with, the governor's order and the chapter 166A that was passed in Charlotte 1, and it was remote participation. But because of the Emergency Act, that's why Charlotte was won. I think there is another case out there that's proceeding through the courts, but I can't remember exactly who's involved in that.
That's just the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is if something were to go, you know, worst case scenario, something were to go south, I don't think the county's gonna be the one to bail us out.
Well, that's what concerns me is, you know, a year from now, you know, and we voted on something, especially if it has to do with zoning, and the development has already started building, and then, you know, someone very upset takes it, court rules otherwise, there was an invalid vote for whatever reason, that was not specifically allowed under state statute, you know, then we're, you know, legally liable in some way. That's one thing that concerns me. Now, you know, if we had a situation where, you know, 30 days later, when we're all here, we do a confirming vote, and I realize that would kind of make mute the original vote if we're gonna wait and, you know, the act of the vote is not really valid for another 30 days till hopefully everyone is present and physically takes a vote in the chambers, then why go through it in the first place the previous month, so.
Right, yeah.
You know, but.
Seems like the safest bet is just if we know we're gonna encounter one of these issues, then we just
I mean,
need the mayor to take it.
I just, you know,
Or
I
vote
just
to
would feel
take it.
better knowing that, you know, statute says, you know, if we take a vote or a certain vote on a certain issue, that has been allowed by state statute, that we're doing it, and that we're not kind of assuming where it might come back to bite us in
Right.
6
I'm
months,
stepping
12 months,
bucket,
18
just-
months down.
Exactly.
And, you know, especially if it's involving a lot of money. That's where people get very uptight, obviously.
So question, could a municipality get around some of that by doing the first and second hearing on the issue.
Well, you would have to continue the public hearing.
Correct. It's a simple, you would continue the public hearing and/or just simply postpone your vote to some later date, which you have an option of doing both. Just because you hear it, as Gary said, it would still leave that part open, but you would not have to, just because you hear a matter, don't mean you have to take a vote one way or the other.
Right.
Like I mentioned before, Charlotte never votes on zoning issues at public hearings.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think our policy makes sense. I think the county's policy makes sense. But what I can't get past is that big bold stuff from Miss, I'm sure probably Dr. Bluestein on page 3.
She's not a doctor, but.
Is she not? Well, I gave her honorary in my eyes.
But again, I stress, she wrote a public opinion article, but then when you call her and/or her cohorts, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Yes, you certainly can. So her article was not all inclusive of those. And let me say this is just a big, just FYI. As long as everybody's gonna be here, it don't matter.
Right, exactly.
It don't matter. But we cannot foresee the future of when people's gonna be sick or unhealthy or the next version of COVID or some other thing comes up, which by then, the state is already trying to change laws so that the governor can't come out and do what this governor did. But we're arguing on one hand, well, you can't do that, you shouldn't. Well, we did for a year and a half, just because one person said so.
But you're not looking at changing our policy here, right?
And that's entirely up to
Because
you all.
Well, it
We don't
would
vote.
change our policy, because the policy well, the original policy, Gary is saying, you know, that in his opinion, that we cannot vote remotely. And technically, you know,
Ours
by
says you
his,
can, except you can't do
Wilson
the zoning,
and,
zoning
Rita.
issue.
yeah, you know, we can't even participate, but Gary, please correct me on your revised policy. The only big difference is, you cannot vote remotely. You can still participate, discuss remotely, but you can't vote remotely.
Correct.
And that, you know, that's, to me, takes out a lot of legal jeopardy out of it. Obviously, to me, if the legislature would just pass and clarify this, it would moot this discussion altogether. But
that's why there's so many attorneys, different opinions.
Yeah.
And there is not any court cases pending on
Right.
this
right,
that has been made aware to me.
yeah.
And again, I find it not in good taste to say, well, y'all's policy's wrong and our attorney's smarter.
Well, yeah, but let me throw this out and see who salutes it. You know, if the remote board members' vote is the deciding vote, then it is, the matter is continued to the next regular meeting. Then
That gets out of the,
that takes us out, to me, the legal jeopardy, when hopefully at the next regular meeting, enough people are to give a deciding vote to where it doesn't depend on the remote participants' vote.
anybody
To
dis-
answer George's question, I think what's in your packet is the first policy is the current one that was done under COVID.
Right.
And then the second one that's printed is the one that I've modified.
Right.
So there's nothing, legally speaking, right, that towns and counties all over the state, right, adopted policies like these when the SOE was put in.
Some did, but the legislature, although created a statute that adhered to what our policy we adopted. My memory is the governor did his executive order, and about a month later, we adopted our policy, and about a month after that, the legislature adopted a statute basically saying what the governor's executive order and our policy said.
So, but then once that state of emergency was lifted,
The
right,
statute
which
still applies,
still applies.
but only when there's an emergency. Which I mentioned
So it went back
here.
behind, it went back in the cabinet, then,
It
basically.
went back in the cabinet until there was another emergency.
And the law that's pending now is the one that says he don't have the authority to declare an emergency again. It's gonna take a majority of legislatures to do it. So, with everything, it's like I say, you can go down a rabbit hole. Well, this one was right, that one's wrong, this is my opinion, well, they're wrong, and there's no court cases pending that's gonna decide it, and the statute clearly don't define, and I echo what Gary said. Most good municipalities or counties have a policy that is followed, whatever that is. But there's several that have no such policy. They just do what they want willy-nilly.
So that we can kind of wrap this one up, Mike, I go back to Mr. Hinkle's point. If we add, and you were adding that language to the draft or to the existing policy?
Well, to the, give me a second.
How does the draft?
I would say to the existing policy, because the existing policy allows a remote vote. You know, because Gary's proposed revised policy would not. However, if that remote, again, that remote vote is the deciding vote, then the matter is continued to the next month's regular meeting.
No.
When are we anticipating the legislature coming back with a final decision?
They will not on this policy, as we have tried to explain to you all to choose one. Legislature's not, to my knowledge, got any bills or anything pending that's going to clarify that one way or the other.
And more than likely, unless this rises to the level of something major in the state where a municipality says, hey, we're in trouble with this, and they ask their legislator, as we would anything else, to address it, it's probably not gonna be addressed anytime soon, that I'm aware.
I'd rather that not be Troutman.
So we have at least an offer in the room from Mr. Hinkle. And so I want anybody opposed to his offer?
I support what he's saying, and if we're gonna use the county as our basis for doing this, we ought to probably put some of the language that the county put in there. And that'd be in our policy now, that's where we have, you can't vote on a zoning issue, and then if you're deciding.
I'm saying, you know, add that to the current policy, was it policy 56, I believe?
Yeah.
And add to the current one, and then
Yeah.
at least we have.
I realize that goes against Gary's suggestion in the revised policy, but I'm trying to come up with something hopefully that will be palatable to all of us, to where, you know, you can vote, but if it's the deciding vote, then it's continued to the next meeting, next regular meeting.
And I'm good with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's a magic bullet here.
No, there's no
Outside
magic-
of just, honestly, if I'm participating remote, I'm probably gonna abstain,
it's,
just to,
I don't know, you can't just abstain.
Yeah, you can't, no, it would be considered an affirmative vote. If you abstain without the vote of the council to allow it, it would be considered an affirmative vote.
That means
present.
Well, affirmative of the motion, whatever that is.
Yes.
So can you,
So the simplest way, if you don't wanna vote, is don't call in. Or don't show up to me.
so can you maybe add the language that Mr. Hinkle had,
To policy 56.
to policy 56? And if y'all are okay with that, we can put that in consent. That'll be the latest update to the policy.
And that language was, if the remote vote is the deciding vote, then the vote is continued to the next meeting.
Correct.
Next regular meeting.
Which technically could be continued again if in fact we don't have enough, but anyway.
That is true, yes.
Leave that for another day.
I'll let you know.
So it'll be listed D in this right.
So just because you,
Excuse me.
so you're not telling me if it's.
Did, and just asking for clarification, just like D says, no participation may be by email, text messaging, instant messaging, or similar form of electronic chat. That is not in our current policy. On page 9, 28, section D.
We have the number 10 in our policy.
Yeah, so we're going number we're looking at policy 56.
Yeah.
Yes.
Current policy, and it does have no participation may be by email, text, instant message, or similar form of electronic chat.
Same thing.
Yeah, so we're good.
No, but that only applies to council members, right? Because don't we,
They're the only ones that can vote, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We're good?
And where are we adding that? What section?
Be number D, I think, in section 3. Is that number 3?
Down in remote, remote participation shall not be allowed.
Yeah.
D.
Following.
And if you will, type that for everybody and send it to them,
Yeah, I'm trying to.
end of tomorrow's business so they can read it.
participation, it's just that the vote becomes not.
Well,
Shall not be allowed during open session.
that wouldn't be consent, so just send it to them so they can,
Would it be, that would it be is the deciding vote, because it says, it already says it should not be allowed, so you would not have that word not, that's in the
No,
county.
I think it's a separate number.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree,
Separate
a separate
number.
number, yes, yes.
Just make a separate number
Yeah.
for it, so it's clearly a number, and not a subsection.
I think you can leave that 3 shall not be allowed quasi judicial closed session, public hearing, or zoning issue. So help me understand C. It says public hearing on zoning issue, then the vote on the zoning issue.
That just means you can't participate remotely in the public hearing or the vote on zoning.
I thought it was both, okay.
Well, it is in both, and.
But I was thinking when you say public hearing on zoning issues,
Yeah, so if there's a rezoning of a subdivision.
It can't be
the
part of the
remote
public
under
hearing.
56, the remote person
Or the
cannot
public.
listen in on the public, well, I guess they can listen in, YouTube, but they wouldn't be like the rest of the council in the public hearing, and then when it's time to vote, they wouldn't vote per 3C.
To me, that just goes to what I said. All new councils are not allowed to vote if we're gonna do that now. If, for a zoning issue or any of those things. And the statutes clearly allow that currently, but if we're going to adopt that, and we have a planning and zoning, or a zoning case, and it's continued during the time that a board member would vacate and a new one would come on, then by that policy, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. And to me, that defeats the purpose. What's the same thing, Jerry?
Well, not being able to attend due to, personal illness, employment, and, out-of-county travel versus being replaced by the vote of the electorate, I don't equate those two.
The cause of why you're not there does not change the fact that an attorney's telling you you can't because you don't have the information. That's the substance. Whatever the cause is, to me, is irrelevant. If you don't have the information, you don't have the information. And that's the reason why he's saying, hey, you can't do this, is because something might come up that you can't see or consider. Am I wrong in that paraphrase, Gary?
No, but if you had that situation, I would, if you were a new member and there'd already been a public hearing, I wouldn't recommend you vote on it anyway,
I agree.
because I think it's a due
Would
process.
that not have to be then a vote by the board to, to allow that? Otherwise it'd be affirmative to the motion?
'Cause I don't
No,
know
they,
that.
they could step aside and not participate in that at all.
Without the vote of they could do that on their own without the vote of the council to allow it?
Technically, the rest of the board would need to excuse them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's what I was
Right.
gonna say.
But as
'cause
far as
I-
legal counsel, I would recommend they not participate
Okay,
if they didn't participate in the public hearing.
But here, my point here is, this says remote participation in a public hearing on a zoning issue. when you say remote participation on the hearing side of it, you're saying this is speaking more toward asking questions or engaging
Right,
during the public hearing.
right.
And the possibility that during the public hearing, just like we have had, people may walk up and visually say, well, this, that, or whatever.
I'm probably just, the and catches me there. It's more of nor, neither nor vote during the zoning issue. But, yeah,
Definitely would not be allowed to vote, in my opinion, but
right.
as far as engaging, I'm ambivalent on that either way. As the town manager said, and we've mentioned, if you're by phone, you're not seeing documents, you're not seeing a slide, perhaps. But again, if you want to participate verbally, and again, not allowed to vote, participate verbally, if they make a statement and they're not privy to, say, a document that would perhaps make a difference in their statement, someone could call that to their attention or something. But, again, if they still wanted to participate and put in their 2 cents, I'm not upset by that or offended by that whatsoever, but
I'm not-
again, as long as they don't vote.
Yeah, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I was just trying to clarify the and the vote on the zoning issue.
Right.
The way it was stated. So I'm good with the way it's presented. And given that we have number 10 in there, I think it still makes sense to, just continue to follow that language.
Okay, and then obviously, okay, all right, yes, all right, yes.
Any other questions or comments? So we'll have the updated language on Thursday.
So it's not on the actual agenda, it was for discussion today. You want to add that to the agenda?
Yes, we can do that. I think there's been enough discussion that we would not be doing everybody a proper service if we didn't see the wording and then allow council to debate some more within themselves and or discuss with each other privately.
You said a minute ago about adding an A, what?
No, as I was reading, I was talking about the, under remote participation number 3,
On our,
under policy
Under 56.
item C. I was just saying the and, I wasn't quite following the vote on the zoning issue piece, but I understand it now.
was there a correction made to Mr. Hinkle's?
Mr. Hinkle's would be, I would just add it as, you almost wouldn't have to renumber these, and I would suggest making it number 4 and shifting everything else down. That would make it easier.
Okay.
Or you could add it to paragraph 9.
That's very possible, yes.
Yeah, so add that sentence to number 9.
Now,
Yeah, I think that's a good place to put it.
did you hear that, kid, number 9?
Yes, sir.
'Cause that's talking about actual voting, where it's allowed.
Do we need a roll call vote in that scenario?
I still almost go to a point where it just feels like it needs to be a separate item, so. Because if you put it under 9, that's just talking about voice vote, and participating by video. This is saying your vote counts. So you can't vote under these items, but you can vote in this instance. But it's, unless it's not quasi, but unless it's a,
As long as it's not a deciding vote.
unless it's decided vote. I can go either way. I just feel like this is the sticking point of this policy.
What was your original suggestion, to make it 4 and
Just
then
make it 4 and
everything else
shift it
drop down?
Yeah.
Okay.
get into the potatoes of notifying. Any other question or comment?
Okay, one more time, I'm gonna read this. If a remote vote, you want me to put by council, is the deciding vote, then the vote is continued to the next regular meeting. That's the only sentence you want me to put, right?
State it again, in favor,
If a remote vote by council is the
by a
deciding.
council member
Okay.
is the deciding vote.
Okay. If a remote vote by a council member is the deciding vote, then the vote is continued to the next regular meeting.
I think probably ought to say that the motion is continued to the next meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the motion,
Motion.
sorry,
Okay.
all right. All right, we're good.
We're good.
Thank you for that robust discussion. Next item is Independence Day events.
Yes, sir. As we discussed last week during the retreat, there's several factors. Some employees, we wound up working 21 hours that Saturday with the federal laws on paying employees. When we normally ask them to work overtime, they get paid time and a half, and/or if they choose and the supervisor approves, they can get comp time to be taken off at the same rate later. But because of it falling in a holiday week, it does not accrue the same way. So the employees kind of get double punished in that they have to work to make the events occur. We have discussed, I've talked with several of you individually, talked to some people in the community that has had opinions, and staff, we've talked a good bit, and Emily will be here Thursday if we need to talk to her more about what she feels as a department director and staff. But the general idea is, I think most everybody feels that the Independence Day Parade is one of the things that we can boast and brag about. As far as the parade goes, it's one of the most special ones in this part of the state. And I think staff is certainly on board to try to help facilitate that if that's the choice of council. And going forward, as far as the rest of it, that's where it gets very murky. And going back to what Councilman Oxer said, hey, this is how much money we're paying for what? Let's cut it out now. But it's not just the fee of the fireworks that goes into, it's all the extra labor and money that we do for the festival. And again, while we are very inviting for Troutman, most of the people that use our amenities are not town residents, quite frankly. They're outside areas, and a lot of people, if they have a 28166 zip code, want to say, yes, I'm a town resident, but my point is, they're not paying taxes for those amenities and things. And again, we certainly want to share. We're not trying to draw a line, but at what cost to the taxpayers is continuing doing that evening part? And as far as staff goes, I can tell you it depletes us, and it causes some very hard feelings having put in that many hours in a day, and you worked over the day before also. So it's a lot of 32 hours in 2 days for several of us, and that's a lot. But our recommendation is up to you all, of course, but we certainly would like to continue the parade. The rest of it, there's pros and cons that can be debated as long as you wish.
Well, I agree, is that keep the parade, because it's like, it's kind of the show of the area. There's not a lot of other 4th of July parades around here. Where there's a lot of, if we want to get rid of the Christmas parade, where there's a lot of Christmas parades going on the same day. That one's kind of a special Ever since I've been here, it's always been kind of a special thing, that Fourth of July parade, and then get rid of the other stuff. When I was at the fairgrounds, I can say that I talked to several people that evening, walking around before the fireworks, and I never talked to any Troutman resident in that whole group. I was there for about an hour and a half.
I will say most, and this is one of the things we discussed as staff, most Troutman residents can see the fireworks from their home, and they don't go and get involved. But to make that a safe event, we've gotta have so many officers, we've gotta have activities for the people that's in there, and not just the fireworks, but you can double the cost. So it comes from 12,500 to easy 25,000 when you pay for the bands and you pay for the enjoyment, festivities, and
In the stage.
and Eddie's stage is what we're gonna call it. But it, when you add the extra labor and all of that, I'm not talking about we write a check to anyone for some of those fees, but again, we're asking a lot of our staff, and it's not that staff don't want to participate and help the town, but very few folks work 32 hours in 2 days. And especially for something like that, the rest of their holiday time is sleeping, trying to catch back up. But I'll be glad to answer any more questions as far as pros and cons goes, because I do feel like there's gonna be people that's upset either way, because we do have a lot of citizens that are upset because of the noise, of what it's doing to animals, because of what it's doing to children. Different people's health conditions don't need the racket of the fireworks. I don't know that there is a right answer. I'm just saying there's pros and cons both ways, but it is a major expense in dollars and expectations of staff if you continue on.
So if we were to not do that, so any agency could like go to Iredell County, I guess, and sponsor if they wanted to have it, right?
They could, and
It just
Iredell
wouldn't be
County
us
could
in
certainly
Iredell
do
County.
it themselves. It's their facility.
Right.
They would just need to come to the town for a permit.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? Keith?
Thank you for
They
that,
would
Mayor.
just need to come to the town.
I like their odds in that situation as well.
Yeah.
But I agree with George, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna ask, so is there a motion on this, subject to?
Well, I'm sorry, did you have something else you want to say, please?
No, I was just agreeing with George. That's all.
Yeah, I just, hearing, I had a feeling when we left the retreat meeting last week that if both were discontinued, there would not be any shedding of tears from staff. And now I'm hearing that if we held the parade, but we don't have the fireworks, staff would be fine with that, or okay with it. I'll say okay, I'm sure they'd like to have the whole day off, but at least they'd be fine with it and not feel overworked if we had the parade, but nothing after. No fireworks, no event up at the fairgrounds starting at 7, and food trucks, et cetera, et cetera. And if that's the case, then I agree. If I'm given the choice between the two, I would go along with George, do the parade. To me, that's the most important. And the fireworks, if we need to cut somewhere, then the fireworks would be where we would cut. But we would still have the parade, unless staff feels like that's an undue burden on them after X number of years of doing it.
I will just add, we have more staff living in town than we ever have. And a lot of those people have pride for our town, and they like our town to be represented well with various, whether it be our job functions on the day, but especially certain events. And this is one, the parade specifically is one that I'm not gonna name any one elsewhere, but you can look at different parades and see some by volunteers are outstanding in this state, and then some others you'll, why did I waste my time coming here? And the fear from staff is from several staff, not just me or anybody else in particular, is if we allowed a nonprofit group or a third party to come in, as the mayor pointed out, they still gotta do the permit, and then we still are gonna have a certain amount of staff working anyway. Cause you got to have that for the event to be safe. A lot of law enforcement, some of us would still be out there working as we are other events that occur in the town, even though they're not our events. So that being said, it's the way to showcase the town in a special way. And about 50% of our employees would be working, whether it's a third party doing it or whether it's us doing it ourselves. So we would rather be the ones that control what that looks like and make it a real nice event, as has been the case.
Well, so, okay, then, here again, maybe this is a compromise from what I'm hearing. We have the parade,
Yes, sir.
and if a third party does not apply to do the fireworks, then we have no fireworks.
And
We
no
play around
festival
town.
prior.
If we do have, then between you and whatever members of your staff, you would discuss who would be involved. If we do have a third party step up, say, we'll do the fireworks, you guys take care of the security and traffic control, et cetera, then I guess, you know, then you would be part of that, as you say, have some control over it since it is within our town limits. So, I mean, is that a reasonable in between one or the other?
Yes, sir. And even though we would still need law enforcement, especially if a third party or nonprofit picks up the festival / fireworks, we would still have to have that because we had last year, for example, one of the local schools had parking all over the front of their lawn, and we were focused elsewhere, trying to do the event. And of course, with the potential of hazardous weather last year is one of the things that offset that. And then you had people on social media saying things that were not true about fires and things of that. It just, there's a lot of negative that goes along with that because, like I say, several of the comments was, we as a town don't care and understand those with medical conditions and or pets and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yes, if somebody did do it, as long as that met all the criteria, we have no reason to deny it. And law enforcement would still be involved, but at least there we would not be wearing out the other departments that have to participate at night. And we have had several of you all volunteer for the last couple events we have, helping pick up debris or checking people in at the gate, make sure they didn't bring alcohol and that type of stuff.
And that leads me to the suggestion that if we do the event, we do the parade, of course, but no festival, parade, fireworks, nothing in between.
As we discussed there, if you do the fireworks, then the question comes, well, where's everybody gonna park? We still gotta have staff to possibly rent the fairgrounds and say, okay, you can come here, but then you've got people en masse that you don't have any activities for that's gonna find ways to make themselves happy. And again, if you open the facility up, if nobody's there to oversee it, we can't control what they do or don't bring, and then the activities that are occurring because of that. So if we did the fireworks, because of that alone, I would say that we not have parking that we're paying for. If the county wanted to open up their facility and say, hey, you can come here and park, we would still have to rent the launch area from the county. But if the county wanted to open it up, and I'm not saying they should or shouldn't, I'm just saying they could, if they wanted to open it up and run that part themselves. I would imagine they would not, but unless a third party did, the issue we then come with doing fireworks only is where does all the people go? And these other facilities will be trespassed on even more rampant than they were last year, because then we had a place they could park. It was the overflow that went everywhere else.
Well, I'm just thinking the reason I was talking about the festival, that's probably where the most of your trash and, you know, your potential for rowdy folks to come in that have had a little too much iced tea during the day and, you know, still feeling it when, that sort of thing, you know, to put that.
They was
I
drinking the
understand there's still
unsweetened
be, you know, you still be some things to pick up, even, but again, people just be there maybe 30 minutes before the fireworks are set off, you know, a lot less trash to pick up and so forth. But I understand what you're saying too. If you open it up, you're still gonna have the potential, people coming a little early and the trash and being a little rowdy and making sure, you know, things are handled in a safe and secure manner. So, you know, I get back to what does staff feel comfortable in doing?
We feel comfortable in trying to weigh out all the pros and the cons. We feel comfortable with the parade. And just like you said, we considered, hey, just at least do fireworks. But again, there's so many negatives that if you just do fireworks, I don't know that the squeeze is worth the juice, as the old saying is.
But one begets the other, the festival and the fireworks, you kind of handcuffed to one another.
Yes, sir. And the festival is just another way of allowing people to show up, as you said, even more than just a half hour early. But a lot of people, if we open up the facility, they're showing up anyway. And it's not that we don't want to do fireworks. As a taxpayer, I'd love to sit on my porch and watch them, but as an employee, I'll be here working if we do them. So it's not that we don't want to be, but there's a lot of money that goes into that. So even if we just did fireworks, law enforcement's gonna have to have extra people on duty because of the trespassing calls that would then come in and directing traffic, because they're gonna wanna try to come, and then we're still gonna have to pay staff to come in and clean up all the debris that's left all over town, especially in that launch area.
So I think what I heard George offer was do the parade.
My motion is that we do the parade only, and then if somebody comes up and wants to do the firework, we can discuss that at some other point. That's how it doesn't involve us. But I say let's do the parade and make it remain the best one in the region out here.
Motion's on the floor.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second? Okay. Mr. Now, first question or comment?
I didn't have anything.
Okay, all right. Motion's on the floor. It was seconded. Any other question or comment?
By no means discounting anything you've said, because I agree completely. But I would like to hear from the Parks and Rec director on this, personally. In lieu of that,
Something that you didn't hear at the retreat, or?
No, just like it was initially brought up, this seems like kind of a, I'm not gonna call it an about face, but kind of a sidestep from what we heard. That's just, that's my feeling. In lieu of that, I will ask another department head, who has a very vested interest in that day, the police chief. Do you see us moving in this direction as the motion is laid out, to go just to the parade? Is there a measurable lifting of the burden on your department?
It is. I mean, you know, the parade is, we have officers come in on their day off, you know, 3-4 hours total. You know, but then we had the festival, you had some guys that are stuck here all day and then all night. So it's a major burden released, and it causes actually less law enforcement use for it.
Okay.
You know, because we have that many people packed into one area, we have to make sure we have enough officers for safety, and then the traffic control issues, which then we're also having, as he was saying, people showing up, they're parking places they shouldn't, property owners are calling, wanting them removed. Well, we don't have enough officers to do the traffic control and everything to handle all that at times. So, you know, the parade, you know, is something that's no problem to be handled for us.
Thank you. And again, not to discount, I just want to gather as much, get as much confirmation as possible, especially since, again, it seems
You're
like.
allowed to say what you want to, but when I say I talk to staff, that would include the Parks and Rec director.
Gotcha, and again, that's what I did not, that was not my intent at all. Just, it, again, just seems a little, I don't know, it just seems a little bit different. But yeah, but thank you for the time, Mayor.
I think the parade's become such an institution here that's just hard to imagine not having it. You know, fireworks obviously too, but I think the fireworks are kind of, maybe an afterthought parade, fireworks. But I think even if you put it to a vote of surrounding community, town and surrounding community, everybody, I think the majority would go with, you can't have one or both, you know, you have the one, the parade. So by having the parade, I think at least we're keeping the majority that are the main focus of the traditional life of Independence Day.
So the motion on the floor is, and a second. Other comments? Jerry offered to want to hear from the Park and Rec director, but unless there's a.
No, I'm more than happy to take the word of the town manager. Again, just, you can't have too many opinions, you know, on the situation. This is a drastic change, you know, so again.
Again, I think we discussed, you know, at the retreat, the fact that, you know, we may just do the parade, or we may not do any of it, right? I think that came out, but,
Remember, I was
Yeah.
feeling a bit draconian that day, you know,
Yeah.
so, yeah. So
So,
maybe that's just in my head, so I
motion's on
apologize.
the floor, received a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. We will focus on the parade this year. Again, look forward to a wonderful parade and giving some time back to our staff for the latter part of that day. So I think that's important as well. Next item on the agenda is setting the date for our annual retreat. So I mentioned mid to late April, a second meeting mid to late May. Anybody, first of all, we've got to have our final budget completed by June 30th. So that gives us a little bit of time to get that final meeting on the budget completed. If we start that, anybody opposed to mid-April, mid to late April, or mid to late May for our first and second meeting?
I'm not available the 20th or 28th
Of what?
of April.
Of April. I'm sorry, what was the game, you said 20th, what was it?
20th through the 28th.
Oh, through the 28th, okay.
Any other current,
Will this be multi-day? We looking to do 2
no, it
days?
should be a one day, right? What, yeah.
In the morning?
Typically, it takes the majority of a day. We have started in the morning. I think last year, we started a little bit later. If our memory serves me, we started at 9 a.m. But it's one of those, depending on you all's schedule, I mean, we start at 7:30 or 8, but each department head would come through and discuss what their needs are, depending on how in-depth the discussion went. And I'm not trying to discourage any discussion. Some of these take longer than the planning retreat, just because they had to have a lot of questions asked and vetted to see what we were trying to do or why or wanting to accomplish. And then some of them can be real simple. This is what I'm asking, this is why. It makes sense, it can be done in 15 minutes. And that's why I'm not trying to say anything different other than the first presentation of the budget, I'm sure, has always led to some fact-finding direction that we get from you all. That's why the second date is requested, just in case that occurs again. And while every one of these department heads do a wonderful job, I'm sure there's still things that we may not have the ability to answer to all of your satisfaction and or for vetting purposes. So that being said, Councilman, now we typically start in the morning. We do plan for a lunch, and then usually wraps up a little bit early in the afternoon, or we start later in the morning, and I think last year we started 1 and then finished in time to do, agenda.
That was gonna be my first offer, is that we do the same. It's a full day, but, it's,
That's
April
cool if it's a
10th.
Monday, but
Yeah,
I don't wanna be here all day, you know, I'd like to be here in the morning. and
Right.
End it up by 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone would like that, so they
Yeah.
can go home and have dinner.
What day
Yeah.
did you say?
And I'd prefer not to do it on an agenda briefing or a regular meeting day. I'm sorry, I just would prefer, I don't care if we do it morning or afternoon or all day. I just don't wanna hang around for a
Stay
meeting
on
after
Okay.
that, so.
So that
my
moves us to another day in that week, though, April 11th. Everybody's opposed to agenda day.
Not everybody.
Not everybody's not.
I like having that
On
cutoff
April
time.
11th, we have PD doing something that day.
Say,
The Chambers is reserved, PD, it says O, I don't know.
OC training. We have
Okay, so,
a training class that day.
I'm sorry,
Come
what's
get
happening that
pepper
day?
sprayed, there'll be volunteers.
We have a training class.
Go get a
Oh, in
certificate.
here,
Yeah, for that day.
that's April 11th.
Yes, sir.
April 11th and April 13th that week, PD has it both days. This gets back to what we was telling y'all at the planning retreat. This is the room for everything.
Mhm.
What about Tuesday or Wednesday or?
That is Tuesday.
Okay, it's Tuesday.
The
okay.
10th was agenda day.
Okay.
12th is open, the Wednesday of that week.
You know, Friday, again, I'm going on tradition from years ago, was always a day that we, for whatever reason, you know, when Lauren was mayor and so forth, but, you know, that's a good day for me. Friday is, or Wednesday, if it comes down to that, but either one.
14th is open.
14th.
What day is that?
Justin's not available
That's a
14th.
Friday?
What have you got?
People are going away usually, and wanna get an early start on some Fridays.
Okay,
Okay.
next week,
John has
it's
another-
18th, maybe.
You can leave your, well, Justin's not available on the 14th, he's out of town.
That's a Friday, that's the Friday.
Yes.
Well, the Wednesday then?
The 12th, the 7th, the Friday before, which is April 7th, it's open.
It's Good Friday.
That's Good Friday.
That's a good day.
So
doing the
it's
12th.
either the 10th or the 12th.
12th is fine with me. That's a Wednesday, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If we did it the 10th, we'd be able to put it on there.
Yeah.
For the follow-up day, you have that one, in May, agenda is on, May 8th, May 12th, that Friday is open,
What'd you say?
May 12th.
Wait, we just confirmed the 12th?
No,
I'm
no.
sorry, of April, as the first.
April 12th on a Wednesday. If you wanted to go with the Fridays, it should not take all day.
This makes a
I'm against,
reviewing.
I'm against the Friday.
Okay.
Second.
No, we'll do a Wednesday then on that week.
The May 10th, if you want to do, that week you have agenda on the 8th and town council on the 11th. If y'all want to do it that week or postpone to the 17th, that's whatever's y'all's pleasure. We're good either way.
It's a shorter meeting anyhow, because
Yeah,
coming back
exactly.
with all the budget after we already made our
Right.
adjustments for the first meeting.
Correct.
So we're only talking about
Oh, I can't do
half a
17th.
day.
Yeah, 17th's not good.
I can't do that.
So May 10th.
I'm good.
Yeah.
May
Can you be ready by
Again, what day is that? Is that a
That's a
Monday?
Wednesday.
It's a
It's a
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Start at noon, or you want to start in the morning and then have lunch brought in and get done when we get done?
I would suggest we start at 9 a.m. on both. That's my suggestion.
All right?
That way, we've got time, if it's, you know, we get to beating something to death, we've got extra time to do it. And if we get
Can we
finished
wrap-
by lunchtime, that's great too.
Can we wrap it up by 4 o'clock though?
Oh, yeah.
Both days.
I would think so, when you, by 9, if we start at 9?
I would hope so, but I can't predict the discussion.
Well, you wanna do 8 or 8:30? What do you want?
8 was good for the, what we had, just had.
All right,
And we went till 4:30.
All right.
Still.
Well, like I say, I'm like George says, I'm not as worried about the second meeting as I am the first. Second was just gonna be a carryover, so.
I kinda like knowing an end time. I mean, Councilman Oxford just mentioned it's nice to know what time we're getting out of here,
Well,
because, you know,
okay.
Even if we're not getting out, we did it on the agenda, but we know that's good.
Well,
It's
let's
coming
do
to
like
an
the
end and we're gonna
retreat
start
then.
something.
Eight to four, like the treat.
missing
we got
dinners
May-
don't go over too well with
May
the boss.
10th, and we need to be out of here by 4 o'clock.
Well, May 10th, we should be out of here before 1 o'clock.
Yeah, that's what,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah,
follow-up.
should be.
We can schedule that one if you all like from 8 to 1 on May 10th.
8 to 1 on May
Okay.
10th.
And then April 12th is 8 to 4.
Okay,
Okay.
8 to 1,
all right.
put 1:30.
All
We're
right,
turning the
that's
lights out,
exactly-
y'all stay as long as you want.
Yeah. All right, we good?
Okay.
All right. Next item,
Can you just give me those times, just on the April date?
8 AM to 4 PM.
April 12th
April 12th, 8 AM
to 4
to
p.m.
4 PM.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
And then May 10th.
next item is the overview of the, upcoming
It's
meeting.
gonna be real busy. I hope that means y'all turn it to opposite of what that normally means. Number one, Roman numeral 1 is the normals. Number 2 is the consent agendas. We will talk about there, it's in your packet, the purchase of 3 Dodge Charger patrol vehicles. I will say there, the chief had scheduled those just to remind you all. When we ordered vehicles, we don't know when they're coming, when they're not coming. When the chief ordered them, he stated that it needs to be for next year's physical budget. If they didn't mind, they said they didn't mind. However, the third one showed up yet?
It's talking about it'd be delivered soon.
2 of them have already shown up. And the thing is, the funds are there from our budget according to Justin, and we're just asking to go ahead with that purchase instead of waiting till next year's budget. Rollover of unused funds from Troutman's mobility plan. Justin, you want to talk about that?
Yes, so in fiscal year 22's budget, there was $40,000 budgeted for the Troutman mobility plan, but those were not used.
Correct, we didn't get started, the consultant wasn't hired, and we didn't get the plan started till, after the budget was.
So this is just a budget amendment, just to budget it for fiscal year 23, to move that from last year's budget to this
Just
year.
rolling it over.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So moving it from 21, 22 to 22, 23.
Yes, sir. So since those funds weren't used, it went in the savings in the fund balance. Does that make sense?
Oh, that designated fund balance, right?
That's right.
Professional fees.
So these are what we were talking about at the strategic planning retreat. Developer has us, has West Consultants do work. And so us as the town, we're just the middleman there, so we have to pay for those fees up front, and then we request the reimbursement from the developer. So that's just a budget amendment to clean that up. So $40,000 revenue that we'll be receiving from the developer, $40,000 of expenditure that we have to pay, so.
Any questions? We go to item number 4, annexation request to direct the clerk to, investigate. That one is still on number 5.
That's the one that was withdrawn.
Excuse me?
That's the one that was withdrawn, the Sunbeam Properties, number 4.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was looking at 2 different projects. Number 4 and number 5, both, number 4 is the one that needs to be removed. They have decided they're no longer gonna pursue that project. All of number 4, A, B, and C. Number 5 is the one that's still on, that's the proposed tractor supply one. That one is on there for you to do.
Got a little
yes.
typo there.
Go ahead.
On 5, on your draft, you got 1.5 acres, 10.5. Whatever that's worth. At least according to the application, all that had 10.5.
Ladies, y'all wish to explain that?
Just an oversight on my part. I apologize. I must have just, when I was typing that up and sending it to Kim, I must have just left the 0 off.
That's why I wasn't trying to get anybody in trouble. I just
appreciate you
pointed that
pointing it
out, so,
I mean, that's what we're here for,
Thursday
to make
night,
sure we
yeah.
get it right
Yeah.
before Thursday.
not trying to get anybody in trouble. Okay.
Number 6, approval to amend the Troutman schedule fees. We've already started talking about some of those earlier this evening. We will get that information to you tomorrow between Adam and the finance director. Number 7, approval economic development agreement for CI 77, that's the Houston Road projects. Gary you did review that, if I remember correctly, correct? That economic
Yeah,
development?
that was called Colette, and originally in November is when you passed it. They've now bought the land and changed the name. So, you know, the agreement's there, and still the same amount, $600 and some thousand over a 3-year period.
Well,
I will mention, unless, if it's important, Jen and Chad cannot be here. I think they're on vacation this week. The attorney for CI asked if he needed to be here. I told him I'd let him know tomorrow. Assume not unless y'all have any significant questions.
Any questions on that project?
it's the standard agreement,
Right.
I would say that, there's
There's
nothing.
been no changes.
And it's also can be stair-stepped or phased, depending on which terminology you wanna use.
Is Jen not gonna be able to be here either?
She's on vacation.
Okay.
Any other questions on that one? Number 8, our employee of the month is Kimberly Sager. Most of you all know her up front, will recognize her. Roman numeral 4, standard reports from Troutman Library and Troutman Fire Department. Roman numeral 5, this is the part that gets long, as each one of these needs to be opened up for hold public hearings. But the first one, number 11, is the EV charging stations. This has already been through Planning and Zoning Board. It voted, one person dissented, but everybody else voted for it. Number 12,
Excuse me, sir.
yes, sir.
Where are these gonna be put? We'll find out.
Basically in the area of near Sheets, there's
On there?
12 charging stations.
On their property.
No, sir.
On our
A
property.
lot beside,
I thought it was the Exxon.
Exxon, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
I said
yeah.
Sheets, it's the Exxon.
Yeah.
A
Yeah,
lot
according-
beside the Exxon.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, according to the background, they said south end
Correct.
parking
You're
lot.
right. That's correct.
At,
And no cost to us.
That is correct. And this is a text amendment that will allow charging stations to go as an accessory use on commercial property.
Right.
But you're
And their
absolutely,
properties,
yeah,
at no
Tesla.
cost.
Number 12 is the amendment where we've been instructed by you all to come back with recommendations, mobile food trucks. We will discuss that to whatever in depth you would like. 13 is a text amendment for front setbacks to amend one of the articles in our UDO to allow certain structures to encroach and establish front yard setback. Number 14, text amendment addressing where sidewalks are required. This again amends our UDO to clarify where they are required in new developments. Number 15, text amendment about feather flags. That's the ones that stand on the lineman pole and flop in the breeze. That also amends our UDO so that we have more consistency in that. Number 16, consider approval of amendments to our water and sewer policy. Number 17, consider modification or termination of an annexation agreement between Town of Morrisville and Town of Troutman. And what that is in general is a year and a half ago, we had 2 property owners to request release of 2 boundaries of property, just the southern entrance of Flower House Loop. There was 2 properties there. One of them was owned by an individual, the other one was owned by the FOP. At that time, the request went through Morrisville's planning and director, Danny Wilson, and also the town manager. There was conversations with commission, and commissioner said, by all means, go ahead. The nutshell, without the long story version, is after a year later, the town manager down there misconstrued what they would like for us to do as far as identifying other properties to be annexed in, as far as amending the boundary agreement. We identified in the considerable expense to engineers 3 different parcels. 2 of those parcels, their public works director agreed that yes, those make sense and they should go to the town of Troutman to modify. The third one was not in agreement to, and our engineer on our behalf said, hey, let's go ahead and modify the agreement with these 2, but we'll wait because Morrisville's also doing a study to decide on this third one once their study was done. Geographically, I would just say that's around Shinville Road area, that side of 21 was the third parcel that was kind of maybe, maybe not. And we honestly had no heartburn to any of it. We was following their directions to do all of that. Once it was prepared, their town manager then said, well, we've got to modify the wastewater agreement that we have with your town. I'm like, there's negotiations with Statesville. We can't give up capacity down here unless we have an agreement with Statesville. So we can't do that. That then went to, well, we don't have an agreement. We're not modifying anything. One of the property owners in particular reached out to Morrisville commissioners and said, hey, what's the deal? We bought the property because you all said there was no heartburn. It's my understanding that several commissioners have said, we don't have a concern. What's the holdup? This past week, I received an email from their planning and zoning director stating that he was not sure what I was requesting. And I clarified this past week specifically what I was requesting. And it's up to you all, again, that we need to at least consider modifying the agreement for the 2 parcels so that we have an official act. I don't know that it warrants doing away with the boundary agreement, but if you all take a vote and decide, yes, we're modifying it for these 2 parcels, one's a 9.8 acre, it should be in your packet, it used to be Bonnie Smith property. The next one is owned by Troutman ABC store now. And those are the 2 parcels that we need released from the boundary agreement. It's that simple. I'd be glad to answer any questions on it. Yes, sir.
Will that affect our water deal that we have with them?
We don't have a water deal with them. They also wouldn't talk about water unless we agreed to modify the wastewater agreement. And again, that's staff and that's not the elected officials. And I want to stress,
Right.
everything I just said is staff level. That's nothing to do with the elected officials. By third-party information and or direct comments from the elected officials, they have been very supportive and prefer the long-term relationship of the town and have even directed staff to stop negotiating these things. There's done deals.
Well, I mean, for us to consider modification or termination, I think we want to hear from their elected officials, not their staff.
How we get that is we take a vote that says we wish to modify the boundary on these 2 parcels, and that should handle it. But we were instructed by their staff to not keep coming back for little bits and pieces. That's why we identified the entire areas. But I hear what you're saying, but that's up to you all to.
Well, if this is what it's gonna take to kind of get around, one individual, I think, or two maybe, that are not elected, and get the attention of those who are elected, go ahead and, proceed with the two properties. The I believe you said it was the, FOP and the
It is-
ABC?
It is now the ABC, and it is owned by another company. They bought out the Smith property once they were told that there was no issues. But it's I don't remember off the top of my head what that company now is. It's no longer Smith property, but the 9.8 acres was sold. The FOP property was sold to the ABC store.
Oh, okay. And I would say then, to go ahead and our intent to modify those two pieces and see what the reply is.
They already know our intent. I actually need you all to vote
Right.
to modify the boundary agreement with those two properties Thursday, at Thursday's meeting. And again, that's the least that I recommend you do. The most would be, so, okay, we'll do away with it all, being you think we're gonna keep coming back for more pieces.
I, at this point, because that's not that old, what was it, 2018, 2017, when we?
2017?
2017, yes.
It's actually, I think it's stated on here, 18 approval.
Yes, sir.
what you said.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, what do you all? What'd you say? I'm sorry.
That, the map said 18, but
18.
seal was 17.
It was redone because there used to be a four-party agreement, actually, the county, Statesville, Mooresville, and Troutman. And once the boundary agreement with Statesville was done away with,
Right.
then that required this one to be reconfigured.
Eric was at the time.
I would offer, yeah, that we move forward with the two, and we give staff the approval to continue to negotiate. We'll talk a little bit more with Moore's elected on the other property and see what we can come up with some solution.
Mooresville elected, am I correct?
That's
What you
correct,
say?
yeah.
Is that all you need from us?
Yes, sir?
Yeah.
Well,
That's
Thursday I'll
Thursday.
need to vote,
Well,
but yes,
that's
yes,
what I want.
yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
And that was, consider the annexation and boundary agreement with the city of Statesville. That one is, maps in there, as we just discussed, the annexation agreement that we used to have with them, was initially sent notice in 2016 to disband it. That became effective January of 2021. And there is current no agreement with us. You all have maps in your packet that shows the proposed boundary areas. I know Mayor Pro Tem asked me to have something showing a little bit more specific of what that area was. But in general, it's basically everything north of Moose Club Road would go to Statesville as far as future annexation request. Wallace Springs Road, both sides, would go to Statesville future annexation request. And out to exit 45, south and west of the interstate and Murdoch Road, what is commonly been referred to as gym site for a whole lot of years, would then go to the town of Troutman. And that would be our general line that is there. Mayor, did I miss anything from our discussions on the boundary?
No, but I think based on our conversation with Statesville, very much needed conversation, very cordial. Appreciate them sitting down with us. Again, I think this is a reasonable map once we, look at it.
Yeah.
I think we may need a little bit more clarity on the specifics, but based on what we were considering in the past, prior councils asked, particularly everything south of Moose Club Road was, I think, our big concern. And of course, we've got development coming in that area, and so I think it was good conversation with Statesville, and helps us make a very clear, what appears to be a little bit more reasonable attempt at clarifying what our boundaries are. So, but again, good conversations that we have with them.
Now, Mayor or Ron, Murdoch Road, north, coming off of Amity Hill, turn left on Murdoch Road. Everything north is going to be Statesville, and south will be Troutman. I'm talking about out, in fact, and even coming on in towards the town. That was kind of what I was talking about, you know, if I could have just a little bit bigger map with some roads, landmarks or something, I can kind of get an idea of exactly, you know, what Statesville will be gaining.
The boundary would become Duck Creek Road.
Duck Creek, right, Duck Creek, but now, all right, you come out Duck Creek, you tee into Murdoch.
From
You take
Murdoch, if you're heading north on Duck Creek, everything to the right of Duck Creek would go to Statesville, everything to the left would go to Troutman. But Duck Creek Road and north of Murdoch is the dividing point
Okay.
of what was recommended.
Okay, north Murdoch, like you say, east of Duck Creek,
Yes, sir.
north of Murdoch where Duck Creek and out to interstate, north of Murdoch would be Statesville. So,
Yes, sir.
okay, I think, you know, I'm not trying to give anything away, of course, this goes back to pre-pandemic and things kind of went off the rail after that, but, this is kind of what we were hoping for in discussions back then.
Yeah.
Okay,
If I may just point out on your map, these white areas here are already, because of state statutes on contiguous city limits, those are already Statesville.
okay.
This area here is the Duck Creek Road, even though it does not say Murdoch, that's Murdoch Road
Okay.
that comes through here. That line right through there.
Okay.
So this would be ours because of contiguous city limits, and that's why it's not marked in additional. This part here that is in the blue lines, that's the part that by statute could remain in Statesville, but they're giving that up for us giving this up in this area.
Okay, and again, you know, just to repeat, I think that's what we were hoping for in previous discussions.
The only thing different from the last meeting we had is this block right here. That's the only thing different.
Okay,
We had requested that and they kinda indicated we could, but other than that, everything else is like you described.
but you don't consider that any great loss, do you? They're
No.
Hamilton Road.
No.
Okay. All righty. Well, you know, I'll just say that, I think this boundary agreement, has been kind of a little bit of a thorn in our relationship with Statesville over the past few years. And I think with that, especially in our discussions with water and future water and sewer agreements with Statesville, as well as maybe perhaps other matters, perhaps this will make it a little bit easier and our relationship turning to a more friendly one if, you know, if we reestablish the boundary agreement, whatever we finally, that's mutually agreeable to both sides, that we finally have something there that, I just feel like that's kind of been, and especially in certain electeds, and even maybe one appointed person in Statesville, that, we get that boundary agreement established, if this is it, this is it, would reestablish hopefully a friendlier relationship, with Statesville, Troutman.
As the mayor said, it was a very productive meeting, and the only thing, nothing was drawn up or written on paper, of course, but basically going forward, we can discuss boundary, then we went into water, it's whatever you need, we'll come up with something. And like you say, without getting too much information out there, it's a negotiation process that has to benefit both citizens, City of Statesville and Troutman, and it sounded very positive. On the wastewater, that part was not as warm, but there were still some possibilities there that may work to where Troutman needs to pay its way, and the mayor reiterated some terminology I was using was like, give us capacity, and then the mayor said, hold on, we're not expecting you to give anything. There's a price that comes with it, and I think, honestly, I hadn't paid attention to my terminology, but I do think that phrase actually was a stick in the craw of some of them with us saying give, and it's definitely not a give situation. It's Troutman will need to pay its way, and for those services, just identifying what that could be for the future is the part that determines how much more capacity we could gain. Is that fair enough to say, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
And that's all we have for Thursday's agenda.
So where do we stand on this then, as far as Thursday night, adopting it, or
That is certainly you all.
kind of a memorandum, MOU with Statesville, where it's not legally binding, but they've got an MOU that we're agreeable to this?
I think,
I would say that you would move that you are agreeable to the concept of the boundary line, subject to a final written agreement.
that is also my recommendation, and as we have said before, even though we're talking about a three-part problem with Statesville, we have to get beyond all three parts and negotiate it at the same time. One kind of needs to be by itself to show that we're trying to be good neighbors, but then the next one then comes up. But I agree with what Gary said. It just shows that, hey, we're willing to go forward, and then leave it up to Ron and I to come up with here's the partial numbers, and then represent that later for final approval. It's my understanding they too tonight are discussing this very topic.
Okay, if there's, no other comments on the agenda, I need a motion to go into closed
Before you do
session.
that, if I may, I'm sorry. It's only because it happened today. We got a judgment today against the Richard Crisp A1 signs. So we've got the judgment. The question becomes, what do y'all want to do with it? It's obviously here in North Carolina. If we want to file it in Virginia, we'll probably have to hire a lawyer in Virginia to do that. I can't tell you the cost. My guess, yes, would be anywhere from $300 to $1,000. That's the next step if you want to register it in Virginia in the county where he resides. Otherwise, it's on file in the Iredell County Courthouse.
Any thoughts on registering it in Virginia? I mean, that's the last knowing the location where he's at.
Yeah, and if you want to try to have a lien on any assets he has in Virginia, that's the only way to do that. Otherwise, it's simply a judgment here. If he owns anything in North Carolina, then we can seek it. And obviously, credit agencies will pick it up nationwide.
Any opposition, first of all, to registering it in Virginia?
Well, if he's, and I realize you can't ask the question, but if he's got the assets that we can put a lien against, I just don't wanna spend $300 to $1,000, find out the guy ain't got as the old saying goes, a you know what to pee in.
Well, this won't identify any assets. I mean, I think he owns his home, and whether he's married, I don't know, because
You don't want his
that's a judgment.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just, don't throw more good money. I mean, we've already paid him $10,000 and got nothing for it, so but.
So you're opposed to going any further, that's?
Well, no, I guess I'm thinking out loud, Mayor.
Okay, no, I'm
not
asking.
necessarily, I'm just thinking out
Yeah.
loud right at the moment. I'd like to hear from
Yeah,
every,
yeah. Other
you and everyone
thoughts?
else.
I think we want any intention of getting anything back, we need to go to Virginia.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other?
I'll get a quote on a price.
Okay. Yeah, we can go further at that point. All right, if there's nothing else, then we'll go ahead and Need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143, 318, 11A5 to discuss acquisition of property.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Who do you need in the room, Mr. White?
Just our clerk, Gary's welcome to stay, but I don't think he's needed. It's up to him.
Okay.